Hey fellas, Meat Trapper here. Today we're going to do a viewer request video. From time to time I get contacted by a subscriber who has a specific problem and needs some specific advice on how to solve it. In this case, one of my viewers has an issue with coyotes getting into their chickens. And anybody that keeps chickens knows that that's not a good mix. The interesting thing about this problem is normally you'd have a fairly small chicken house, and you would simply put your traps where the coyotes are crawling under and you'd be done in short order. But in this case, this particular viewer uses a method of free ranging their chickens, so they end up having several acres that are fenced in by a chain link fence. And when you get to an enclosure of that size, it's not really feasible to defend every potential crawl under. You would need dozens and dozens and dozens of traps. And if you're raising chickens and you're not a trapper, you're not going to have dozens of traps. So what we're going to talk about today is snaring coyotes as they run along the perimeter of your chain link fence. One of the things that the coyotes are going to do is they're going to run along the side of the fence, and they're going to look for openings. They're going to look for places that they can crawl under. And so when you've got several acres of fence, one of the best things you can do is set up snares alongside the fence and simply pick them off as they're running the perimeter. So let's take a look. To make things easy to demonstrate, I'm going to demonstrate on this little bitty dog pen here, and we're just going to imagine that this is an enclosure of several acres. Now, one of the first things that the animal is going to do is it's going to run along the side of the fence. But the real hot spot, if you think about it, is going to be the corners. The animal, when it comes to round the corner, it's going to take the shortest distance between A and B. It doesn't make sense that the animal is going to come to a corner and then swing way out around the edge and then go back to the perimeter of the fence. When they come around that corner, they're going to cut that corner as closely as possible. So the first thing you have to do is you have to identify sign. You're looking for any trails in the grass that show that they're running along the perimeter of the fence. And if you can get sign on side A and side B, then you know the corner that intersects A and B, that's going to be your hot spot. So that's the first thing I would look for. Number one, you've got to have sign. You've got to set your snare in their trail. If there's no sign and no trail, you're wasting your time. If you can find sign on both sides of a corner, that corner is going to be your hot spot. So now let's take a look at what we need to set up a snare on chain link fence and the best way to do it. The tools that you're going to need are very simple. You're going to need a pair of pliers, a good pair of side cutting pliers. You're going to need a snare with an extension cable already attached. And you're going to need some tie wire. Now the process that we're going to use is we're going to uncoil the snare, and when you uncoil your snare, make sure that you don't put any kinks in the snare cable. Just take your time and uncoil it and let the cable assume its own character. Don't put any bends or kinks in the cable. Another tip is every time you make a cut in tie wire, make you a safety bend on it, always. This is going to help if this wire springs back and hits you in the eye. It's much better to get hit with that part right there than with that part right there. You get hit with that, you lose your eye. You get hit with that, you have a sore eye. There's a big difference between the two. Okay, when we have our snare uncoiled, you can see there's the snare loop. And at the end of the snare, we have joined it to an extension cable. And that's a fresh extension cable. You can see it hasn't been dyed or dipped yet. That's okay. The purpose of the extension cable is to give you a little bit more reach so that you can set this snare a little bit farther out from the pin. And also, when a coyote is caught, he's going to go basically crazy. And by putting a 3 or 4 foot extension cable on, it allows him to get a good running start before that noose really closes and yanks shut. And this is a non-relaxing this is a non-relaxing snare lock. The harder he pulls, the tighter it's going to close, and the coyote is going to choke himself out when he gets caught. So let's take a look at affixing the snare to the fence so that he can't get away, and then setting it. And one of the first things we want to do is we want to attach the snare to the fence. Now you can attach it to the chain link itself, but it's better to attach it to a more solid upright support, because you're going to find out the coyote is an extremely strong animal and they're going to fight extremely hard. So you take your end of the extension cable, and you can see that's just a fixed loop. We're going to run it around here like this, and then we're going to take the free end of the snare, we're going to make the loop small, and we're just going to slide that through the loop like that. Now that we've got our snare attached to the firm upright of the fence so that it's secure, the next step is to actually hang the snare so we can catch the animal. Now what we're looking for when it comes to coyotes is we're looking for a loop that's going to be about 12 to 14 inches across, and the bottom of the loop needs to be about 14 inches off the ground. Now that's a general rule of thumb. If you're dealing with juvenile coyotes, you may have to lower it to 8 or 10 inches. And if you're dealing with full grown, about 12 to 14 is a good range. So what we have to do is we have to take a piece of our tie wire, and we're going to attach it to the fence and then insert it into the support collar of the snare so that it ends up looking something about like that. Now one of the important things is the position of the snare lock. We want this lock at about a 10 o'clock position. We don't want the snare lock at the very top of the loop, because you can see it's already starting to slide down. Any wind or anything like that, any vibration would set it off. But if we keep that snare lock at a 10 a.m. position, then it's going to take an actual tug to get that snare to fire. The other thing, if you watched any of my snaring videos, you know that I use loaded snares so that they're actually coiled and pushing and ready to fire at the slightest touch. You see how fast that thing fires. All the coyote has to do is touch it and he's caught. So this is what we're looking to end up with. You notice how close I have that to the corner position. That's because when they round that corner, they're going to hug that outer corner. We'll talk about setting up in the middle of the run in just a few minutes, but let me go ahead and get the tie wire set up, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, we're going to take our tie wire. We're going to use our safety loop. I'm going to put it over the fence like that. Now, if we were to just crimp this down right here, we're not going to get a sturdy mount. What we have to have on a chain link fence is 2 points of contact. We have to have a point of contact there, and then a point of contact down there. Once we have that, this is not going to move, and we can bend this support wire anywhere we want to support the snare. So we have got to have it attached here, and then we're going to wrap it around right there. That's the key. This thing has to be tight. So let's go ahead and crimp that on there. We'll give it another turn just to be secure. Let's pull it tight. There we go. Now, you see how I've got that tight? I can put that support wire wherever I want it, and it's not going to move. So let me go ahead, crimp that down. Okay, now at this point, you can see I've got my 2 points of contact, one up here, one down there. My snare wire, I'm able to bend it to any position that I want. So I'm going to form my loop and simply insert the support wire into the collar, and then I can put that snare right where I want it. That's what we're looking for. We've got about a 12 to 14 inch loop, about 12 to 14 inches off the ground. Our snare lock is at a 10 o'clock position. We've got 1 point of contact, 2 points of contact. That stabilizes our wire. Notice how I bring the wire down and then I angle it back up. This sets me up to be perfectly in line with the support collar angled so that the lock is at a 10 o'clock position. Now study that. That's what you're looking for on a corner. Now for setting up in the middle of the fence, the procedure is identical with one exception, and that is we want to use a longer piece of wire because we may have to reach out away from the fence farther depending upon where the animal is traveling. And this is where identifying the trail is going to be critical. You need to figure out if that trail is 6 inches from the fence, if that trail is 12 inches from the fence, or if that trail is out even farther, 18 or 24 inches from the fence. And that's going to dictate how long this support wire needs to be. So the principle is the same. We need 2 points of contact. We're going to loop it over that, crimp it down. We're going to wrap it around a time or two to get our second point of contact. Then we're going to put our support wire out and hang the snare. But like I say, the difference is the length of the support wire and how far away from the fence you need to reach. Now if you have to reach out a long way from the fence, you may end up having to double that wire and make it twice as stiff so that it has enough strength to support that snare 3 feet out into the open. And yes, you can hang a snare 3 feet away from your support as long as you use a stiff enough wire so that you don't have any flop or slop in the support. So let's go ahead and hang this. We'll put that there. Once again, we're going to get that crimped on there good, like that. I'm going to come down and we're going to wrap it a time or two. And you want to get that tight. If it's loose and sloppy, then you've failed. The thing about snaring is your support has to be nice and tight. If your support is wiggling or wobbling around, you're going to have poor results. You can see I'll spend some time getting that nice and tight like that. Now at this point, I've got my support wire. It's ready to angle up. Let's make my loop. Let's slide that into my support collar. And we are just about ready to go here. Let me get that. You can see you got to fool with it sometimes to get that loop to hang just right. But take your time. There we go. And that's what we're looking for. About 12 to 14 inches across, 12 to 14 inches off the ground, and it's got to be right in the middle of the trail. Well, that's about it. Snaring is something that I really enjoy doing. It's to me, it's very easy. It's simple. It's lightweight. Requires very few tools. You just need some wire and a pair of pliers and your snares, and that's it. The main thing is get your loop size right, get it the right height off the ground, but most importantly, it's got to be hung where the animal is traveling. And so snaring, more than anything else, requires that you identify your trails and your sign. When you're dealing with conibears or leg holds and baited sets and all that, you can put bait or lure out and bring the animal to you. With snaring, you've got to go to the animal. You have to identify his trails, and you've got to hang the snare where he's going to be. You don't want any bait, you don't want any lure, you don't want that animal to know that anything is there until that snare hits his neck. And then that's the last thing he will know. So I hope this has been useful. I hope the demo on the little dog pen on the concrete made it to where you could see better. I've had trouble in the past with demos doing them out in the woods. You can't see the snare wire. Anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. If something's not clear, let me know. I'll be happy to reshoot it. And if anybody else out there has any requests or any specific problems they're dealing with, if I can help you at all, let me know. If it's in my skill set, I'll do my best. And if it's not, I'll try and refer you to somebody that can. But anyway, I hope this has been useful. Thanks a lot. It's another hot day here in the deep south, and I am looking forward to trapping season. Trust me. Thanks a lot.